Welcome into 5 Wide Fantasy. Today, I've got 32 training camp notes for you from the preseason, from practice, things you need to know if you haven't paid attention to a lot of the preseason talk, haven't paid attention to training camp. I've got one important note for every single team to help you with your fantasy drafts, as this is the perfect time of year for everybody drafting, probably this weekend in the lead up to week 1 next week. Let's not waste any more time. If you guys do enjoy today's video, be sure to let me know. Hit that subscribe button, like this video as well. Would really appreciate it. Before we get into it, show you a quick video from our sponsors, the STUNT. Social media is such a crowded space these days. If you're looking for sports content on the latest news, advice, or hell, even entertainment, it can be cluttered by content you don't actually want to see. That's where the STUNT comes in. They've taken all the elements of your favorite social media apps, brought it to one place, and made it about the one thing we love most: sports. STUNT was founded by the creator of YouTube TV at Google, so the design is eye-popping and the navigation is simple. Check out the latest takes, sparks, and live rooms from us and other content creators like Trey Wingo and Michael Irvin. Don't just follow sports. Be a part of the conversation. Download the STUNT app today. You're actually reviewing people's fantasy teams yesterday in a live room on the STUNT. I'm going to be doing that again on Thursdays. I know a lot of you guys have been drafting teams over the last week or so. If you want to have your fantasy team reviewed, I'm going to put in the community posts. I already put one in earlier this week, my email to send it to. And then Thursday, 4 to 5 Eastern, I'll be reviewing your teams. We'll talk about them, any ways you can improve, any changes you can make before the year, or anything you should be paying attention to during the season. So I'll include the link to download the STUNT below. Download the app for both Android and iOS. And we will see you guys Thursday again, 4 to 5. Let's get into our first team here. It is the Arizona Cardinals. My takeaway from the preseason as the rushing attack will be the focal point, and that is helpful for James Conner if you have him or want to draft him, because they let Colt McCoy go. That left only Clayton Tune as a guy and David Blau as guys they could potentially play in at quarterback. Then they signed Josh Dobbs, and the reason they did that was because Drew Petzing is the Cardinals' offensive coordinator. He used to work for the Browns when Josh Dobbs was there, and I think the bringing in a guy like Josh Dobbs screams we're going to be running the football quite a bit and really devalues those wide receivers. So James Conner will be a heavily featured player for this offense and the straw that stirs the drink here. Next, we move to the Atlanta Falcons, and I think the big takeaway is Bijan Robinson has the handle on this starting role. There is nothing to be scared of when it comes to Bijan going in the early rounds of your fantasy drafts. I've been seeing projections into his opportunities and carries in this offense, and his lion's share of the work with the starting unit so far in the preseason, as well as they wrap things up. No concerns with Bijan Robinson here. Tyler Algier has value as a backup. We'll get some opportunities, but Bijan Robinson, even as a rookie, is not going to be slowly integrated into this offense. He's already ready to go, so there's nothing to be worried about there. The Carolina Panthers are a really tough team to pay attention to from a fantasy perspective, but one thing you need to remember heading into your drafts is they're already banged up at wide receiver. DJ Chark is just notorious for not being able to be on the field. Terrace Marshall banged up as well as Laviska Shenault. That's given some opportunity for Adam Thielen, also given some opportunity for Jonathan Mingo, the rookie, to get more opportunities with the ones. I think Thielen was a player for me that I wasn't really paying attention to much, but it does seem like he will be the most consistent option for this offense. He was hyper-targeted by Bryce Young in their last preseason game, so something to keep in mind if you're looking for any flyers in your draft in the later rounds. With the Chicago Bears, I'm really interested in how this running back room shakes out, and what I'm hearing heading into the season is the rookie running back Roschon Johnson his role is growing by the week. It started with a lot of work on special teams, a little bit more involvement in the receiving game, and it seems like Deonta Foreman might be moving to that third guy on the depth chart. And if Johnson gets that in the receiving game, there is no telling where this guy could go. He is a super talented player, had to play behind Bijan Robinson at Texas, but if this role continues to grow in the regular season, he could be one that pays a lot of dividends for a team that's going to run the ball a ton. Moving now to the Dallas Cowboys, another team very interesting when it comes to the running back position. Deuce Vaughn, expected to be having an immediate role in this offense, playing as the RB2. And I think that's not just a important note for you as a last pick of your fantasy draft, but also telling for Tony Pollard and his opportunity to take over all of those carries left behind by Ezekiel Elliott in the red zone on scoring chances. So Deuce Vaughn's a very undersized guy who's been very good throughout the preseason and training camp, but I think his role ultimately lives in the receiving game in between the 20s. So get ready for a big touchdown season for Pollard. Getting into a little bit of rookie tight end talk with the Detroit Lions, Sam Laporta. I'm very excited with all the conversations that come with Sam Laporta. You don't see a rookie tight end kind of earn a role and opportunity with the ones straight off the hop, like Laporta did with this Lions team. Jameson Williams not being there for the first 6 weeks will be impactful as well. He's already looking in training camp like the legitimate number 2 option for Jared Goff. So definitely someone to be looking for as you're looking and desperately trying to find some tight end upside. Same thing goes in the NFC North here with the Green Bay Packers as well. Luke Musgrave. Or out of Oregon State, it seems like the Packers are kind of hell-bent on him having some significant utilization from the tight end spot. They've been using him even in some jet sweep packages as well, which is really telling as to what they think about his athletic ability. He's been a dynamic kind of downfield over the middle threat, and when you have that rookie quarterback, the tight end can always be a great safety valve. He's interesting. He's one of those players that's more on the precipice of being a player to draft in your 12-team leagues, but in deeper leagues, definitely want to have an eye on him. The Los Angeles Rams are a team that I think will struggle immensely on defense this season, and Matt Stafford seems to be ready and poised to have that bounce back year and be healthy for this season. You know, he was dealing with a lot of issues in the preseason last year. This year, it seems like he comes into the season 100% healthy. He's got Cooper Kupp. This is a guy that posted really high touchdown totals in previous seasons, that Super Bowl season. And then now you get him with a struggling defense. If you have Cooper Kupp, I would love to take Stafford as a near end of the draft flyer at the QB spot. If I'm taking, you know, a guy like Daniel Jones, and then maybe I pair him with Matthew Stafford as a potential great stack in some good matchups and scoring matchups for this Rams team, who will definitely need to score a lot of points this year. The Vikings are a team that a lot of people need to pay attention to because TJ Hawkinson has not been around for training camp much. He was out with an ear infection. He had some back stiffness. Some of this stuff a lot of people think is just excuses as to why he's not there, and it really comes down to his contract situation and him wanting an extension. I'm not concerned about Hawkinson. He's going to be playing. He's going to be on the field for week 1, I do believe, but it is a potential good sign for a guy like Jordan Addison being more involved in the offense in training camp and building that rapport with Kirk Cousins as a rookie. We know how talented he is. We know it's a bit of a crowded space here for targets and opportunities. But man, if the rookie gets this kind of opportunity, a high volume passing offense early in the season, we could really see him take off. So it's less about Hawkinson and more about the opportunity for the rookie. I've seen a lot of people looking to Juwan Johnson as a potential late round tight end to be starting this season. But it does seem like he has legitimate competition from Foster Moreau. I know Moreau had some health concerns coming into the year, but he seems like a legitimate competitor for his tight end targets for Johnson. And when you look at Michael Thomas and Chris Olave in this offense, not to mention once Alvin Kamara is back, Juwan Johnson scored a lot of touchdowns. Really wasn't a player that you could trust volume-wise. And I think with Moreau as well, as a player that was brought in and signed to a 3-year deal for like 12, 13 million, I think he will be involved. And I think Johnson's a player that just doesn't have enough juice at the tight end spot to really justify throwing into that starting lineup in week 1. So I'm not saying draft Foster Moreau. I'm just saying avoid this tight end room, it seems like. We've been talking about it all preseason with the New York Giants, but Darren Waller is just absolutely dominating the target share here. So what I love to find from The Athletic, from one of the writers, was actually a breakdown of all of the 11 on 11 work that Daniel Jones had in training camp. 180 completions he had. 40 of them were to Darren Waller. Now, that's only a 22% target share when you break it down, but keep in mind that Darren Waller wasn't on the field for all 180 of these completions. I bet you he wasn't on the field for a decent chunk here because there are guys that are thrown into this mix of the 180 completions that aren't regulars with the first team. But the next closest guy was Darius Slade with only 27. So that's a significant separation here. If Waller's healthy, he's absolutely going to dominate this room, and Daniel Jones has looked great in camp, so I'm just higher and higher in Waller as the weeks have gone by. The Eagles, question mark that everybody wants to know in fantasy football, what to do with this running back room. I've talked about Rashad Penny as a player that I really do like, but this year seems different to last. You know, Miles Sanders was constantly a player that it seemed like Nick Sirianni had the backing from and support from. Right now, they are throwing both Kenneth Gainwell, who played a lot of snaps once I dove a little deeper in the postseason, a guy it seems like they trust. But they also have Rashad Penny, I think, who's a good fit as that bruiser to score some touchdowns. Then DeAndre Swift is an explosive player as well. This is a true running back by committee. I think DeAndre Swift is not someone I'm even considering touching at his 8 AP. And now it makes Kenny Gainwell a potential intriguing guy to be taking in the later parts of your draft because there are going to be touchdowns scored by these backs. It's going to be a bit of a guessing game early in the season for sure. This might be more of a DFS play than an actual season-long play for any of these guys. But something to keep in mind when you're, trying to break apart and what to do with this Eagles backfield. Now with the San Francisco 49ers, we have, I think, Brandon Ayuk as this wide receiver one in this offense. He has continued to stand out in the preseason and on the field. I don't know if you guys saw some of those highlights from their last preseason game with his work with the ones. He looks to be playing at even another level in terms of his speed and ability to separate and his route running. Ayuk was fantastic to close out the year. There's a lot of talk about Deebo Samuel when it came to the pictures with his shirt off, him saying he's going to be bouncing back and having a really good year, how motivated he is. But Brandon Ayuk is definitely, I think, the most talented player maybe not the most talented player, I would say the most talented of the two. George Kittle is a crazy talent as well, but Ayuk has really stepped up. He's really separated himself in this offense, and the reports from training camp have been fantastic, so don't be afraid of him even with this competitive offense. The Seattle Seahawks all want to know about the running back room. We did see them let go of DJ Dallas. I think they're very committed to these two guys, Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker, and Walker was a full participant in practice for now the last, I believe, week now. So that is great to see. I expect him to be on the field ready for week one. I don't want to draft any player that carries an injury designation. Walker doesn't seem to be holding those. Charbonnet has been pretty solid in his absence. I do think they're going to be committed to Kenneth Walker, especially on early downs. But if this team's winning games, I think both these guys are going to hold some value, but I still do see Walker as their number one option. But it is great to see these on the field, but obviously a little bit of a detriment to see he miss this much time of camp. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I am very concerned with how this offensive line works this season. They lose Ryan Jensen. They're moving over Tristan Wirfs from right tackle to left tackle, bringing Matt Filer at left guard, who hasn't played much football or been able to stay healthy. They're moving Luka Decky over to right tackle, who's traditionally at the right guard spot. They're mixing and matching here with guys who haven't proven a lot of success in recent years now. I think this is going to make things very difficult for this entire offense, especially those downfield threats like a Mike Evans or being able to run between the tackles with Rachaad White. So temper expectations with this offense. I just don't see a lot of faith here in a guy like Baker Mayfield playing under a ton of pressure. Our last one in the NFC, the Washington Commanders. The Commanders have been pretty mum on Terry McLaurin's status ahead of week one. The turf toe injury, it's one that can linger, and we've seen linger for plenty of wide receivers in this league. And usually I would expect this to be an injury that he does miss the first week of the season. There's a chance he plays. Some people feel very differently about it. Some feel like he'll miss multiple weeks. Regardless, McLaurin holding this injury status, again, heading into the season, I don't want to be drafting players that hold any type of injury status. And I think it could be a good sign for Jahan Dotson if he gets his role, the role that he's been building towards, and then you have that without McLaurin in this offense, could definitely help him really get off on the right foot to start the year too. In Baltimore, nonstop and hearing about the changes to the offensive scheme, but one I think to keep in mind for anyone that's newer to fantasy football or hasn't been paying attention, I've been seeing a lot of talk of their no-huddle offense and trying to speed things up. And that's a benefit for literally everybody on the team because more plays means more opportunities for you to score fantasy points. Your wide receivers aren't going to be affected by an extra play that turns into an interception because you're not punished for those kind of points. So I think there's an opportunity here where there's a lot more, especially at the receiver spots, opportunities for multiple guys to produce, which we haven't seen for many seasons now with the Ravens. But this no-huddle offense will give a lot of opportunities for a lot of plays and a lot of points for this Baltimore team. I've said it all preseason, but again, if you're new to the channel, what I have found, and I continue to read from this Buffalo Bills team, is there is not a running back by committee. And that's something you have been able to say in Buffalo for a few years now. Cook was on the field for 16 of Josh Allen's 18 preseason snaps. The only 2 snaps he missed was because he was on the field for 9 straight snaps and they took him off for a breather. This is James Cook's offense from the running back side of things. Damian Harris and Latavius Murray will battle to be that change of pace, potential red zone guy, but James Cook is ready to take on this full role, and you need to be keeping that in mind when you're drafting him in fantasy because this is a high-powered offense. The Cincinnati Bengals battle here for the RB2 role. I think it is very much still undecided. We saw Chris Evans seem to be taking a little bit of a step to be the third down pass catching option for this team, but he didn't play in the preseason game, and a lot of people, the expectation was he missed time the week prior with injury because he didn't practice during training camp leading up to the game. and Chase Brown was the one on the field in the preseason, but he was on the field without any of the starters. So I think they're still not sure of who this guy is going to be, and I think that gives a little bit more confidence in my mind for Joe Mixon. If they don't have a decision made on this change of pace guy, just pay attention to who that guy might ultimately be, because there could be some value when it comes to having the handcuff for this team as well. But right now, it doesn't seem like either Chase Brown or Chris Evans are separating, so that's a good sign for Joe Mixon. Now, at the Cleveland Browns, it seems like they've been pretty up and down in the passing game throughout the preseason, but David Njoku seems to be taking another step here and has been an apparent connection with Deshaun Watson. And what's changed is a very consistent week in and week out performance, daily performance from him. He seems like a player that's going to be able to attack a lot of these opposing linebackers, while guys like Elijah Moore and Amari Cooper take a lot of attention away with their dynamic skill set on the outside and with speed downfield than a guy like Elijah Moore. So Njoku could be a guy that takes advantage of some opportunity here, especially when now, he's kind of that clear number one tight end of this offense, where he'll see a lot less time off the field. So keep an eye on Njoku. I think he's one that a lot of this preseason hype might be warranted, not because it's not just coming from the team. I've also read it from a lot of the reporters around the team as well. So he could be an excellent tight end to go to if you're not attacking that elite tier. The Denver Broncos, the offense has a lot of injuries, with the loss of Jerry Jeudy to start the season, with the loss of Tim Patrick, with the loss of KJ Hamler as well. And a lot of the talk has gone to second-year rookie Marvin Mims. But I do think this is an offense that will be focused on running the football and potentially playing a little bit in play action. The offensive line wasn't great in pass protection. I think that could lead to Greg Dulcich seeing the expanded role with these absences. They've talked about wanting to get him in a bit more of a non-traditional tight end role where they try to attack some matchups for him as a guy who was really productive as a rookie. I think he posted over 400 receiving yards, averaged like 41 receiving yards a game, which is solid at the tight end spot. He might be more the guy to pay attention to. Not necessarily do I feel like you need to draft him, but pay attention to week one because he's going to have a little bit of runway here without Jeudy probably missing the first 4 weeks or so. In Houston, there's a lot of question marks in the passing game with the rookie CJ Stroud, but Dameon Pierce looking like he might be like the 3-down back in Houston. In the work with the starters, he was on the field for 83% of snaps, and he has 67% route participation. The one thing that the team was concerned about with Pierce heading into or at the closing part of last season was his pass protection and being able to be an excellent pass blocker for this team. But now they've lauded his improvement there, and that's the type of thing that's going to earn you more snaps. And if he gets a 3-down role, I think we're looking at a player that can definitely return on his ADP, and a guy like Devin Singletary might be sitting on the sidelines a little bit more than I originally thought. The Colts are going to be without Jonathan Taylor to start the season, so what should you be doing from a fantasy perspective? Well, a lot of people will point to Deion Jackson. He earned a bit of a role once Jonathan Taylor was out last season. But if you remember correctly, when Zach Moss was acquired last year from the Buffalo Bills, he stepped in and took over to close out the season. Now, he's been missing camp with a broken arm, but there is some reports that he might be back and ready for week one. If he is, I believe he will be the RB1 in this offense as opposed to Deion Jackson. Now they get a rushing quarterback with Anthony Richardson that may overall harm his value. So this is really a play on a potential great matchup for them in the rushing attack because I've seen them give plenty of volume here, and I don't think that changes with the new head coach in Shane Steichen. He does, I think, I believe in his affinity to run the football as well. We saw it a little bit with the Eagles, saw it a little bit with the Chargers too, actually, before Justin Herbert's arrival. So pay attention to Moss. Deion Jackson could be a guy you draft for the time being, but Jackson could very easily be a player you just dump anyways. The Jacksonville Jaguars, some interesting kind of numbers I'm getting from this team on the splits between their wide receivers. Calvin Ridley is definitely the top dog in this offense. He's been on the field far more often than anyone else. But Christian Kirk's been coming off the field for Zay Jones in 2 wide receiver sets. Now, they're running a similar amount of routes. I think there's the potential they like Zay Jones a little bit more as a pass blocker, but I think Zay Jones might be one of the most valuable wide receiver 3s in all of fantasy football because last year he was wide receiver 26, I believe, and he was one of the best guys. I think he was 9th in end zone targets last season. So he is an excellent stash on your bench, I think. And if some of this stuff comes to fruition during the regular season where Kirk isn't getting as much time in the field as we might have thought, Jones is an interesting player as this offense, I think, takes another step forward. The Chiefs wide receiver room. A lot to unpack here. We have a Justin Ross, we have Rashee Rice, we have Richie James, we have Sky Moore, we have Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and I've seen up and down, yes, no, might be the top option, might be the lowest tier option for this team on a lot of different occasions. Richie James has looked really good at times. He's a guy with a decent amount of experience. Looked really good for the Giants to close out the year, so I'm not surprised he's been playing well. But the more things come through from training camp and the more talk you get on all of these different guys, this might be a room that just doesn't matter whatsoever. And I just don't see Justin Ross, Rashee Rice being guys that break out because guys like Marquez Valdes-Scantling or Richie James could be, from that veteran perspective, a little bit more reliable. Rice was battling with some drop issues in the preseason too. So just don't get too excited about this Chiefs wide receiver room. I feel like we do it far too often, and this doesn't seem like it's going to be much different. Quick one on the Raiders. For those of you that haven't been paying attention, obviously Josh Jacobs is back, and I think he's set to assume his bell cow role from last season. Zamir White's had the chance to run with the ones quite a bit. They're still not sold on him as a pass blocker, and that's how you start to grow your role in this offense, is they could potentially go to him a little bit more in the receiving game. That might just go to a guy like Amir Abdullah because White isn't really ready quite yet. So I still do think if White isn't getting on the field on some third down work, Jacobs will continue with the bell cow role. And now that he's back, I don't have any concerns when it comes to the potential of him, being usurped by anyone in this backfield. With the Chargers, I am not expecting much from Quentin Johnston in the early parts of the year. He has been incredibly inconsistent. The drops have been a problem, a little bit of the route running as well. I don't think they want to put a lot on his plate because Josh Palmer has been one of the most consistent players week in and week out, day in and day out in training camp for the Chargers. And Palmer was pretty solid with the absences of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams last year. He's a guy I know they can rely on. He might not suit the skill set of what this team wants to do as much, but I think Josh Palmer affords the Chargers a chance to be really patient with Quentin Johnston. I think Johnston's a guy that's going to end up on a lot of waiver wires, and you're going to be excited to add him as a first-round pick in this year's draft. But I think for a lot of people, if you're drafting him right now, I just haven't read enough that tells me that I think his role will be impactful in the early parts of the season. With the Miami Dolphins, I think their pursuit of a star running back, whether we've heard Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, I think we've heard every running back in the book. I'm kind of forgetting a few that we've heard. Dalvin Cook, obviously. I think it's telling to what they think about their running back room and telling what do they think about Devon Achane, who I think a lot of people have hyped up at different points of the preseason. But I think this will be very much a committee. They want to be better on the ground. McDaniel has said that quite a bit, how they want to be a more effective and more a bit higher volume rushing team. But these opportunities, I think, could be shared throughout the three of them. Jeff Wilson might be the touchdown scoring guy. Achane might carve out a role when it comes to a receiver, and then Mostert is a pretty solid receiver, but also a really explosive runner, so he might be more of that between the 20s guy. And at this point, we might not see much value from any of them, but I think if you're going to take a shot on any, it's going to be Wilson and Mostert over the earlier ADP in Devon Achane. A few more left here, and I would be remiss not to mention what's going on in New England with Ezekiel Elliott. I think it's kind of gone a little bit overlooked. It's affected Ramondre's ADP. I've noticed it in drafts, but I think a lot of people aren't sure exactly what Zeke is going to do with this team offensively. And I think it might be bigger than most people think. I think a lot of people think that he's going to be able to help them in the red zone because Ramondre really struggled in short yardage and converting touchdown opportunities. So I think it's obvious that Zeke gets involved there. But he's also an excellent pass blocker, despite what you might have seen in his last snap as a Dallas Cowboy. But I do think that Elliott might carve in a pretty decent role here. And I think if this Patriots offense is as improved as I expect it to be now with O'Brien calling plays as opposed to what we had last season, there's a chance that there could be enough touchdown opportunity here for Elliott to carve out a bit of fantasy value too. The New York Jets have had some problems with the offensive line. We saw Garrett Wilson miss a little bit of time. It still seems now with that little preseason game we saw with Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson, that Wilson's going to be that reliant target for Aaron Rodgers. That Devonta Adams talk, I think, is completely deserved. But Tyler Conklin looking like the number 2 receiving option for this team. He's put together some rapport with Aaron Rodgers since Wilson's left. And I think the other options are pretty underwhelming. I think we all know that guys like Randall Cobb and Al Lazard aren't high-level talents. And Conklin was actually a guy you could have played in some games last season at the tight end spot. I think if this offense we know is going to take a bit of a step in terms of its efficiency in the pass game, Conklin could definitely benefit. And he's kind of one of my more intriguing end-of-round tight ends to stash on the roster. The Steelers have been the talk of training camp and the preseason, has been one of the best offenses so far. And Kenny Pickett kind of looking ready like he might take a year 2 leap. 13 of 15 in the preseason, 199 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, taking care of the ball too. And from what we've seen in the preseason, paid attention to in camp, his receivers have looked like, I think he's got good talent in Deontay Johnson and George Pickens, and getting the ball to those guys, he's been able to do it at a pretty high level and some explosive plays as well, which his team has really been missing. Still really skeptical with Matt Canada. This isn't really a Kenny Pickett on your fantasy team take. This is more, I think these wide receivers, especially Deontay Johnson, is one I'm definitely interested in. Last one, the Tennessee Titans. And it's one of the players I definitely think you need to add to your team if he's on the wire, if it's the last pick of your draft. Tyjae Spears is going to be an immediate impact player. He was fantastic in the preseason. This is a really explosive player. He finished top 10 in yards per carry, yards after contact per carry, and EPA per rush. All of these because this Titans team is really an underwhelming unit when it comes to protection. He faced at least 7 defenders in the box on a whopping 82% of his rushing attempts. So he's facing stacked boxes and he's running efficiently. In previous years, we've seen the Titans be like, okay, here's Derrick Henry. We got to find his handcuff. It could return so much value, but sometimes it won't even matter because then they'll just sign a Deontay Foreman off the street and he'll take away from that player's value. Spears, very clear handcuff that I think they're confident in playing if anything happens to Henry and could potentially get on the field to give Henry a little bit lighter of a workload where they can't afford to. But Spears is definitely a handcuff that you want to have in Tennessee. All right, we got through 32 preseason thoughts, one for every single team in the NFL. If you guys enjoyed this video, got some information that you think is going to benefit you heading into your fantasy football drafts, would really appreciate it if you hit that like button down below. It's a great way to support the channel. Let me know that you enjoy this content, and as well, would love if you hit that subscribe button. Thank you again for watching. Be sure to join us on Thursday, 4 to 5 p.m. on the Stunt. The link to download the app is down below in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you on the next one.